All right, today we're going to work on an optical illusion that I really like. It's one of my favorites. It's the cone optical illusion. Relatively easy to make, but it is kind of time consuming. You do have to shade very precisely and you got to take your time doing it. The easiest way to do this, if you had a perfectly square piece of paper, fantastic, 12 by 12, 10 by 10, whatever. The other way, if you're just using, let's say, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, I usually do the X approach. So what that means is I'm going to take a ruler. I'm going to find one end of my piece of paper. I'm going to find the other end of my paper. I'm going to line them up. I'm going to draw a line down the center. I'm going to draw another line down. Now I know where my middle is. I'm going to draw a line through that. If your horizontal and vertical lines are a little off, you're fine. If they're a lot off, then obviously you gotta start over. Okay. All right, so now I've got my gigantic X plus two more lines, so I know exactly where the center of the paper is. For this project, I'm gonna be using the drawing pencils. Again, if you've ever used them, the B pencils, like 8B, is a very dark pencil, while a 2B is basically your good old-fashioned number 2 yellow pencil. And let's say you have a 6H pencil, that's an incredibly light pencil. So depending on where you are in the shading process, you want to take some time, go back and forth, and work it from there. All right, so I'm going to start shading. I'm just going to pick one of these triangles. It doesn't matter which one you want to start with. If you like the analogy of happy or sad, that's how I like to look at these projects. So I'm going to start drawing a curved line. Let's call it your frowning face. I've had people say it looks like the Wi-Fi symbol. I just think happy frowny. That's fine. No more than 10. Oh, and I was going to skirt the line. If any of your lines literally go off the page, that is totally fine. You may have to invent some lines. You may have to reinvent some lines. As long as you have between 5 and 10, you're in good shape. Do try and space them out pretty well. All right, the next triangle over, you're gonna go the opposite direction. So I'm gonna connect my two lines together. I'll be totally honest, the best way to do this is one triangle at a time. I've had students try and do all the interior ones at once, and I hate to say it, something almost always goes wrong. So again, whichever triangle you're on, the next one's going to be the opposite of what the last one is. So let's say these are my smiley faces, so now I'm going to go back to frowny. So again, you have to keep a pretty good curve. I mean, if you get a little flat, you're probably going to be okay, but if you draw straight lines, then that's the whole point of this optical illusion, so it has to be curved lines. So if you start oopsing, you gotta start over, erase your mess, find the right way to do it. If some of your lines have to stretch a little so they connect, that's fine too. Even if they get real close, you still gotta draw a curved line as best you can, okay? So back and forth, back and forth. All right, so now I've got all my curved lines in place. The next step is all about shading. I'm going to do two different ways. My personal favorite is just doing one cone at a time. If you feel like you can speed it up or can remember a pattern that works for you, that's great. But what I like to do is I start with my 6B or whatever the darkest B pencil you have. Just for fun, I'm going to grab an 8B. I'm going to shade pretty dark on the edge. And then I'm just going to keep sliding down the row. So I'm going to grab a 6B next. Again, mild change between the two pencils. That's the whole point of shading pencils. They do the work for you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think. Just remember the number is lighter as it works its way down. So I went from an 8 to a 6. Now I'm working on a 4. Again, up close and personal, not a huge difference. Then I'm going to go to my 2B pencil. Then I'm going to go to my HB. And for this one, I'm going to just end on a 2H, a pretty light pencil. And if it helps, you know, I like to use this pencil as kind of an all-purpose shader. All right, so a little bit of a transition. The closer you are to the center, the least amount of interest you get. So my next pencil is going to be the next band. So I'm going to start again with my 8B. And again, you're going to alternate between bands. So 8B. 6B. And again, if you've never used drawing pencils before, just remember 8B to 6B to 4B, pencil gets lighter. And the higher the number of the H pencil, the lighter that pencil is. So if you have like a 12B pencil, that's a pretty extreme pencil, it's pretty dark. Next up is a 2B. And also quick note, notice how I'm shading with my pencil on kind of like a 45-ish degree angle. Just a smart move. The more of an angle you have, the more lead you put down, the more surface you cover, the faster you can draw, the more even the look. You know, just a good way to do it. Don't treat your drawings like they're Word documents and you're actually writing up and down. All right, I'm going to end with my 2H again. And again, I'm going to use the 2H as my all-purpose blender. Any rough parts, because it's such a light pencil, it'll fill in the gaps for you. All right. And skip again, go to the next band out. This one I have to go a little thicker with my pencil marks. So one more time, I went from my 8B to my 6B. Next up will be my 4B. To my 2B. And again, the whole purpose of this is you're going from dark to light. Your outer edges have to be the thicker, darker colors. Your inner core needs to be the lightest pencil you have. All right, that's the first part of the project. All right, so the next part of my cone project, I'm going to show you a blending technique using the drawing pencils. I did one version where I went from the outside to the inside. The next one, I'm just going to kind of do a little bit faster method. Again, I don't really think there's a right or a wrong way to do this. It's kind of up to you. All right, just for the speediness of it, I'm going to start on the outside. Now I am keeping the same shading that I did last time. So I'm going to go 6, but I'm going to do all the ones. Excuse me, 8B. Now for the sake of camera work, I am obviously keeping the paper stable and facing one way. I would highly recommend, if it helps you in any way, turn the paper to whatever angle you need it, okay? I'm doing this so we don't get seasick, but feel free to change the paper so it works to your advantage. Next pencil up is my 6B. And honestly, the only reason I feel like this is a faster method is just because you're using the same pencil. You don't have to rotate between the pencils. It just feels faster. Next pencil is my 4B. And again, it does help to kind of line up the shading as best you can so that, you know, it looks like the same level of value is changing as you work your way across. Next up, 2B. And if the first one feels like it finished before the other ones, that's fine. It's smaller, obviously. The human eye will, you know, connect the dots on its own and make the value scale look a little better. All right, 2B, HB next. And last but not least, my 2H pencil. Again, if you have more pencils, that would be fine, but 2H is a pretty good pencil to end on. All right. And again, if it helps, I use my 2H pencils, my all-purpose blender. Any little gaps or spots you may have missed, fill in with that one. All right, so there's two ways to go about doing this shading exercise. All right, so the next step for this optical illusion is actually filling in the sections that are empty right now. It's up to you how you go about it. Sometimes you might want to do just one cone all together. Sometimes you want to do what I started with, where I do just all the dark ones first. To be fair, at this point, if you wanted to throw in color, which is usually the second version of this project that I do, I would, color in these white spaces with, pick your favorite two colors. I usually go something simple like a dark blue and a light blue. You can do colors like red and orange, as long as they're the same family, yellow and green, blue and purple, you get the idea. But for right now, I'm going to treat this as a purely black and white drawing. Now, the dark parts, I obviously use my darker drawing pencils. For the lighter parts, I am going to switch over to 2B, being my darkest pencil, and I'm going to throw in my 6H pencil because that's a pretty light pencil. I'm not using any of the big heavy B pencils just so that I have a much lighter looking image. So I'm going to go back over the parts that I've already done, mostly so I don't smudge my paper. So I'm going to start with a 2B, and right away you can already tell, when 2B is the starting point for darkness against the 8B, it's a huge difference. So there's my 8B, or excuse me, there's my 2B. Now I'm heading into my HB. Again, not a big change from the two. I'm going to switch over to a 2H pencil now. And again, I'm going kind of dark to light. And last but not least, I'm going to throw in my 6H pencil. Again, 6H, not typical pencil in most packs. 2H is usually where most people stop. If 2H is the only thing you got, then obviously you're going to have to let up on the pressure and manually change it a little bit. So I'm going to repeat myself one more time. So I'm going to start again with my 2B pencil acting as my 8B. So this is going to be the darkest pencil on my alternating bands of shade. So again, 2B pencil. Then I'm going to throw in my HB pencil. Again, by themselves, the difference between one and the other, very little. I mean, typically most people won't even see the difference between these two pencils, and that's fine. That's the whole point of these pencils. Next up, I'm going to go to my 2H pencil. So I flipped from the B's to the H's. And it's okay if you have a little overlap with these pencils into the B pencils. They're so much lighter, it won't make a difference. And now I'm going to end with a 6H pencil. One side note, what I'm going to probably do here, I'm going to actually intentionally leave one little tiny strip of pure white paper showing. It'll really accentuate the light factor. It's like you're throwing in a highlight into it. All right, so just a couple pencils and you can already see this huge difference. All right, I'm going to continue drawing and you can follow along. Alright, so here's a completed piece of art. The big takeaway here is that to make the optical illusion, each cone needs to go from a dark to a light pencil. You can totally do this project with a 2B pencil. That's not a problem. Mechanical is fine too. To make your life easier though, I do suggest you use your drawing pencil sets. Generically speaking, I went from the dark bands to the light bands alternating. Let's say I go with the highest number B I have. In my case, I've got an 8B pencil. Whatever you have, highest number B pencil is where you should start. So I went 8B to a 6B to a 4B to a 2B and then an HB, okay? And then you got to reverse and work your way out, or as I did for most of this project, I just did all the same pencil going down the bands every other one. For the lighter bands, I started with a 2B pencil, then I went to an HB pencil, then I went to a 2H pencil, and finished with a 6H pencil. So again, really the next step is just to polish it up. If you want to take an eraser and come back in and lighten up some areas, that's not a bad idea. If you want to go a little slower, to be honest with you, I've got some heavy lines in my shading just because I didn't turn the paper. You should turn the paper. It'll help you out a lot. Here's another example of the same project where I was able to manipulate the paper a little bit better. It's a great effect. Feel free to do this however feels the most comfortable for you. Again, don't get hung up on, do I need my light source here or there? Just remember, dark to light, light to dark. A nice little added that I went back in for this one is that I redrew my lines so they're a little bit more crisp, and I outlined all the bands. That's just a nice little touch to throw in to make your work a little cleaner, a little bit more professional looking. All right, thank you. Have a good one.